The next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about the digestive system. You know the digestive system digests food. That means breaks down food, and then we're going to absorb it. So the digestive system doesn't just digest, it also absorbs. It also allows for movement. There's going to be other things we talk about as well. But the main goal, right, what really matters is actually the absorption. That's obtaining nutrients, glucose, fats, amino acids, and having them go from the lumen of this tube that goes through our body and go into the bloodstream. And that allows our body then to function. So obviously integrates with other organ systems, the circulatory system, every organ system that needs to have glucose, regulated by endocrine and neural system. And ultimately, we're going to get to the kidneys, the urinary system last. We're going to have eventually the excess fluid be regulated partially through the urinary system, etc. So this week, we're going to start with an overview, identifying the organs and the overview of the processes. Then we're going to start with the oral cavity and walk through the stomach. Next week, we'll start with the small intestine and go through the large intestine. And we've got some other things to wrap up then. So this video, I want to start with labeling some of these organs. First of all, I want you to think of the digestive system as largely being one tube. The digestive tract, it's a tract, right? A tube. Same thing as the gastrointestinal tract or system, GI system, GI tract. Same thing as the alimentary canal. These are all words that indicate it's a giant tube. This is referring to the tube portions. So part of the oral cavity, which includes our mouth, that's where we're going to start. Ingestion occurs there. There's some other structures in here I'll come back to. I just want to do the tubes. We're going to have our pharynx. Again, that's a tube. Esophagus. This whole time through these tubes, we are actually considered outside of the body. This is lined with epithelial tissue, which lines outsides of bodies. Until that stuff gets absorbed by our cells, it's still outside of the body. We continue that tube down to the stomach. Our tube changes shape. Small intestine is like 20 feet. It's crazy. And then the junction here, here's the beginning of the large intestine, which ends with the rectum, and then I will just label the anal canal as the final place where defecation happens. So this, labeled in black here, is all the digestive tract. It's tube. Food's going to travel down in that order I just went through. As the food travels through, it becomes changed, digested. The name for it's going to change, and we're going to start to absorb it as well. Okay, and we'll talk more about this tube, but it's basically muscular along the whole way, along with the epithelial, and that's going to be important for movement. We've got to get food to move down this whole thing. So some other features of this whole tube and the similarities and differences, but mostly similarities between these different parts of the tube will be important. So I told you this alimentary canal all has similar structures to it. So the histology is going to be similar. So this is going to be really important for the function throughout. It's going to vary slightly, but this is the video that has the similarities between all of them. We then can look at the nuance as needed as we go. So this would be kind of a generic section. Again, it's going to vary slightly where we are. Obviously, this tube right here is not the stomach, but the stomach's going to have similar layers. So this is the actual anatomy of generally throughout the alimentary canal. So you know what this inner layer is going to be right here. That's outside of the body. You kind of recognize it even, epithelial tissue, right? Epithelium. Underneath that is lamina propria. That loose connective tissue, it's areolar tissue that often underlies epithelial tissue. These two together are going to be our mucous membrane or mucosa. I only have room for mucosa there. Mucous membrane is the same thing as mucosa, mucosal layer. Underneath that is going to be our first muscular layer, and debating whether to do the full name. We're not going to do that. I'm just going to call it inner muscular layer. This is really zoomed in. See how like thick this stuff is out here? Lamina propria is a very thin layer. This epithelial layer is very thin. Outside of that, we've got some more muscular layers. No, before that though, I've got, so here's the muscular layers. You can kind of see those. I'm just going to call those muscular for now since I started talking about that. But this is actually inside, right? This layer right here. This is a gland. Both of these are glands. So this is our submucosa. Just like we saw in the trachea, submucosa is often underneath mucosa. The mucosal layer produces mucus. The submucosa helps with that. There's glands in there that are producing mucus. That's also going to be really important for the digestive system. So that's submucosa that contains glands. These are the glands themselves. Then we can go back to our muscular layers. You can see there's two. There's a circular layer and a longitudinal layer. This one here is trying to use the same lines. Is our circular, goes around that way. Longitudinal, go along the long way. So two muscular layers. It must be important to have muscles in there for movement, right? Then outside of that, we've got this layer here, which is serosa. This is also called adventitia. Serosa, I actually prefer. This is going to be areolar, a thin layer of areolar plus simple squamous epithelium. One of the other rare places we see simple squamous. Then we've got accessory organs. So you can see some other things that are in this picture. These are salivary glands. Produce saliva that will be important for digestion. Some other tongue and teeth I'll come back to. Actually, I'll just label them here. Teeth are going to be important for mechanical breakdown. Right? Liver is this big one right here with the gallbladder right next to it. And you know these, right? Because we've done this anatomy in the rat. Here's our pancreas. Liver, pancreas are the two accessory organs that we will spend the most time on. The enzymes and other substances produced from these two organs, super important for digestion. So these are something I can't spell, accessory organs, meaning not part of that alimentary canal, but still super important for digestion. We'll also briefly mention the pancreas again in terms of the hormones that regulate blood sugar.